Kentucky, January 30th, 1925. Early morning. The ground is still damp, the last of the winter snow just beginning to melt. Floyd Collins, a 37-year-old cave explorer, drapes his coat over a nearby boulder, adjusts the rope slung over his shoulder, lights his kerosene lamp, and lowers himself into a hole in the ground barely wide enough for a man's body. The entrance to Sand Cave. For Floyd, this was just another day at the office. For weeks he'd been spending up to 12 hours a day down there, clearing gravel and stone to widen a narrow passage. His motive was simple. This was the height of what became known as the Kentucky Cave Wars, a bitter, sometimes underhanded scramble among local farmers to turn any cave they owned into a paying tourist attraction. Floyd's own family cave, Crystal Cave, was genuinely spectacular, but it sat too far off the main road. Almost nobody made the trip, so he'd struck a deal with a neighbor to explore and develop this smaller cave instead, one much closer to the highway and to the crowds. He went in alone, no helmet, no proper equipment, just a single lamp, and he hadn't told anyone exactly where he was going or when he'd be back. He wormed his way through passage after passage on his stomach, at one point squeezing through a gap so tight he had to push the lamp ahead of him with one arm while pinning the other flat against his side. Eventually, the passage opened into a larger chamber, and that's when his lamp began to flicker and die. He knew better than to be caught underground without light. He turned back immediately, retracing his path through the same crawl space, and as he moved, his foot dislodged a rock, which in turn triggered a small rockfall. A 27-pound stone came down directly onto his ankle, pinning it in place. He twisted, pulled, strained. Nothing worked. He was trapped 60 feet below the surface, wedged into a space barely large enough to breathe in. When he didn't return, his family went looking and found the cave entrance partially collapsed. Faintly from somewhere deep inside, they could hear him calling for help. What followed was one of the strangest rescue efforts in American history. The passage was so narrow that only a handful of people could actually reach it. The most famous was a slight, wiry young reporter nicknamed Skeets, who crawled in repeatedly to interview Collins directly from inside the cave, coverage that would later win him a Pulitzer Prize. As the days dragged on, the story exploded into a national sensation. Newspapers ran it on the front page every single day. Radio stations across the country followed the drama live. Tens of thousands of people descended on the tiny town of Cave City. What should have been a rescue site turned into something closer to a carnival. Vendors selling food and souvenirs, crowds lighting campfires right at the cave mouth. Fires whose heat melted the natural ice inside and sent meltwater pooling into the exact spot where Floyd lay trapped. By February 8th, a day locals later called Carnival Sunday, an estimated 10,000 people had gathered, many believing this would be the day he'd finally be pulled free. One rescue attempt tried to haul him out directly with a harness and rope. It failed and badly injured him in the process, wrenching his body upward against the rock ceiling above him. Rescuers shifted strategy, deciding their only real option was to dig out the stones surrounding him piece by piece and pry the rock off his foot by hand. But the ground kept giving way, collapsing the passage again and again. At one point, rescuers even discussed amputating his foot to get him out. Eventually, the main passage caved in completely, cutting off all access to him. Rescuers were forced to start over, sinking an entirely new vertical shaft straight down from the surface 55 feet deep. It took days. On February 16th, 18 days after he'd first become trapped, the shaft finally broke through to him. It was too late. Floyd Collins had died, likely a few days earlier, from exposure and starvation. His body remained in the cave for months, the passage sealed over it. But that wasn't the end of the story. His brother Homer couldn't bear the thought of Floyd staying buried in that mud, and months later had a new tunnel dug to finally bring the body out. Stranger still, a later owner of the cave, a dentist looking to draw in more tourists, placed Floyd's embalmed body in a glass-topped coffin and put it on public display inside Crystal Cave for years. In 1929, the body was actually stolen, later recovered in a nearby field, missing a leg. It wasn't until 1989, 64 years after his death, that the National Park Service finally gave Floyd Collins a proper, permanent burial. The Floyd Collins tragedy became one of the first great live media spectacles in American history, and more than a century later, it's still told as one of the most haunting examples of how a person can end up dying alone, feet from safety, for no reason more sinister than sheer stubborn ambition.